Asaase Radio 99.5, the voice of our land. To be a leader in one's field takes a lot of sacrifice, discipline, hard work, and smart thinking. It is a world of legacies that would be kings and queens. They have journeyed through times and seasons, faced challenges and obstacles, and through it all, they have come out stronger and better. With them, they have carried the African spirit and brought to life the African dream of greatness. For discoveries and great strides they have made. In a world where the African may not naturally be the first option, what has aided them in breaking boundaries and stereotypes?
Welcome to Sunday night, and tonight we are in the house of a living legend of Ghanaian sports, culture and society. We are in the home of Joe Lartey, as most people know him. Now, there are football commentators in Ghana, and then there is Joachim Awule Lartey, universally known as Over to You, Joe Lartey. One of the finest broadcasters of his era, Joe Lartey earned copious respect and recognition in Ghana and beyond. Fluency and inch-perfect description of events in a football game were just a part of a man who became a legend and came to define quality sports journalism in Ghana. Joachim Awule Lartey was born on the 6th of June, 1927, on Lutrod Street in Accra to Emmanuel Akushe Lartey and Emma Arakwa Lartey. He started his education at Accra Royal School and then moved to Tamale with his parents. In 1938, he returned to Accra and was enrolled in Government Senior Boys' School in Kimbu. After completing his middle education in 1943, he entered Accra Academy in 1944, and after just about a year at Accra Academy, he moved to Takoradi to join the Navy, which was the British Navy. After some time in the Navy, the young Joe enrolled in Wolsey Hall and then became a teacher. In 1961, Joachim Awule Lartey joined Ghana Broadcasting Corporation, known for short as GBC, after he got a recommendation from an old mate of his at Accra Academy. Moving from talks and features to the sports department, Joe Lartey later wrote the script of professional sports journalism fused with politics. He flourished as a commentator, building a partnership with Festus Adai, who was the man who went on to make that phrase, "Over to you, Joe Lartey," so popular. From match weeks to remarkable football games, he reported on every movement of the Black Stars of Ghana in the independence era. He was the voice that recounted the match in which they thrashed Nigeria 5-0 in 1961, as well as Ghana's 3-3 draw with Real Madrid in 1963. He was chief commentator also for Ghana's first Africa Cup of Nations in 1963 and the second one in 1965, as well as countless matches in the Ghana Premier League. After longer than a decade, he joined Radio Nigeria, where he stayed until 1990. He rejoined GBC, where he hosted programs on GTV such as Sports Digest and Hall of Fame. Joachim Awule Lartey is the first president of the Sports Writers Association of Ghana, SWAG for short. In the 53 years of its existence, the association has honored the heroes and heroines of sports and sports journalism in Ghana, and Joe Lartey still serves as the patron of the group. He is also known for delivering live commentaries for both of Ghana's Africa Cup of Nations wins, as you mentioned, in the 1960s. He is celebrated for his interviews with two key sports figures from America, about which we may hear a little later on in the program. Ghanaian sports journalism was redefined by his professionalism, delivered unfailingly in his distinctive voice with his gifts of description. Many of the younger generations of Ghanaian sports pundits today cannot talk about the game without paying tribute to the 94-year-old. When it comes to running commentary in this country, be it political, be it social, and especially to football commentary, Joe Lartey stands tall among his peers. He is certainly one of the very best to grow out of Ghana. We are delighted and overwhelmed, Ola Lartey, to have you on Sunday night. So thank you so much for welcoming us into your home on a Friday night when maybe you should be knocking back a few beers and catching up with the football. Thank you for welcoming us to your home.
Thank you very much. I'm very happy that you were here.
We're so glad to make it. So can you tell us, how long have you been in this particular part of Accra? We're in Bawe. It's a beautiful, fresh breeze blowing across, and there are hills. You can see across to the mountains on the other side. How long have you lived in this part of Accra?
I think we've been here less than a year. We were living at Biokoshi, an estate. We had an apartment there, and we were on the second floor. So as we grew older and older, we realized that it wasn't quite safe to be climbing this thing up and down. Our daughter is here, and he needed to supervise our life from time to time. It wasn't easy. He was doing a very, very challenging job, courier service. So he was having too many difficulties keeping an eye on us. So finally we decided that we should move in here to reduce his anxiety, you know. And so we came, and we are happy here. We're very happy.
I think the Gao people would say, before Mongo.
Before Mongo and Akwale.
So you have a happy family life,
Yeah.
and that is such a joy to see in your 9th decade that you're still living as a family unit.
Yeah.
Now, I'm making assumptions, but I'm assuming from your name that you come from La.
I come from Jamestown.
You come from Jamestown.
Jamestown.
Okay. The heart of Accra.
At the heart of Accra.
And that's where you were born.
No, I was born on Luttrell Street. Luttrell Street is no longer, nobody remembers Luttrell Street anymore. It's the street that runs from Watu. The street that runs from Watu and joins the High Street. You know, it comes, there's a roundabout over there that comes down to join High Street. That it used to be called Luttrell Street.
Okay.
It was very popular at the time. There's a small establishment there, a settlement. My grandparents moved from one part of Accra to settle there. And they named the place Ahunka. Ahunka meaning peace. You know. And that's where I was born. But the day I was born, 6th June 1927, my father insisted that I spend the night in his own home, in his own house. So in those days, they didn't have taxis, but he was then a helper. He was a clerk with one of the very popular lawyers in Accra. And he borrowed the lawyer's car, and they drove me from Luttrell Street to Korle, where I spent my first night on earth. Yeah. That's right. So my dad insisted that I should spend the night in his own house at Korle. At that time, Colegono was a very new settlement. Jamestown people settled there. And 1927, the place was enveloped, shrouded in bushes, a lot of bushes.
Colegono, surrounded in bushes.
Yeah, a lot of bushes. We were living in the bush, and there were so many reptiles, snakes, scorpions, millipedes, centipedes, and all the rest of them. And my dad had a double-barrel gun, and he was killing them like nobody's business. You know, he was a more or less a marksman. He could kill a snake lying on top of his wall, you know, just like that. And it went on and went on. Gradually, Colegono began to develop, and today it's a different story, completely different story.
It puts a spin on something that I remember from my own family circumstances, having a mother who was born a couple of years after you, not so far from where you were born, but also in part of Jamestown, with a father from Colegono, incidentally, who was also a clerk of the court. So I think there was a little bit of a culture going on there.
That's right.
But can you tell me, what sort of culture was it you were born into? Was this a sporting family?
My dad was a very good cricketer, but that was all he did. He played cricket, and I came to see some of his cricket gear, you know, lying about. And apart from that, I was so loved by my parents because he and my mother, they had two children. I was the elder of the two. And I forgot the year, but when my dad was transferred to Tamale, he was a treasury officer. And he was transferred to Tamale to head the treasury department there. We were so much in love with our parents that separation became a problem. But somehow he had to go. And when he left, we were all mourning his absence and so on. And surprisingly, my younger brother, 2 years younger, called Nate, he took ill. And before my dad could arrive at Tamale, he had died. He died at the age of 7, when I was 9 at the time. And so the affection that my parents had for the two of us were all heaped on my head. They were so fond of me, you know, and they did everything to preserve me. So my dad thought that it wasn't a good thing exposing me to sports. I could be injured. So he didn't allow me to practice sport, to play football, nothing, you know. Interestingly, when I started running live commentaries on GBC, one day he sent for me and he said, "Look, I hear you are the fellow who makes all the noise on Sunday evenings on the radio." I said, "Yeah." He said, "Who taught you how to play football?" You know, I learned I did a bit of sport when I was in the Navy, and it stood me in good stead. You know, so it was very, very interesting. It's a remarkable point in my life. He said, "Who taught you to play football?" Because I was doing soccer commentary, and the speed with which I was running. You know. So from there, with inside broadcasting, I was lucky to have met a man called Festus Adai. He had a beautiful voice, an Akwape man, very beautiful voice, and he was my boss. You see, and very early on, he recognized that I could work hard and I had a talent. So instead of covering me under a bushel, he exposed me. He exposed me. And we shared commentary from time to time. And at the end of his bit, he would say, "Over to you, Joe Lartey." And I would say, "Thank you, Festus." So I went on. So we got this name, Joe. Over to you, Joe Lartey, which has lingered till today. So,
if I may interrupt you just a moment, Joe Lartey, because just to talk a little bit about before you came to broadcasting and your childhood, presumably, as you said, your father was transferred to Tamale for reasons of work. And then later you all moved up with him, or did you stay in Accra with your mother?
When
your father moved to Tamale,
we followed him.
You followed him.
Yeah.
What was it like moving from Accra to Tamale in the 1930s?
It was very interesting. In those days, it used to take 3 days to travel from here to Tamale. You do the first part of a journey on train.
To Kumasi.
You left Accra in the morning. You arrived in Kumasi sometime in the evening. And then we slept in a rest house, government rest house. And the next day, my dad, because he was a senior officer, they gave him a whole government transport truck, green in those days, painted. So it was one truck for him and his family. And we traveled along the road from Kumasi right up to Salaga. I think we got to Salaga. And we spent another night at Salaga. And from Salaga, we went to Tamale. And the roads were untarred.
I was going to ask
and
you
the
what
dust,
they were like.
The red dust. When we arrived at Tamale, we were more like red Indians, completely covered with dust. And then we started life there. My dad didn't like me to. The only school then in Tamale was a school called Tamale Middle Boarding School. It was a boarding school. And I had to go to the boarding school, but he didn't like it. So he arranged, I don't know how he did, but he got me out of the boarding school and I became a day scholar.
Wow.
Yeah.
Unheard of in those days.
Pardon?
Unheard of in those days.
Yes, I became a day scholar. And then there were about 7 girls, ladies, who were also members of the school. They used to walk from Tamale, from the center to Bagabaga every morning. I came back in it. So I had to join them. They did a trip to a school in the morning, and then my dad came for me in the evening. He was running a bicycle, BSA bicycle, very high thing, and brought me back to the house. So we Tamale Middle Boarding School gave me part of the foundation of my life. I had to learn so many things.
Did you face language difficulties, or was it mainly talking English in school, which you were fine with?
I don't know what goes on now, but in those days, Tamale Middle Boarding School, from morning till evening, we only spoke English. We were not allowed to speak any vernacular, any local language. And we had a magnificent child library. There I developed my taste for reading, which later helped me a lot. So when we finished with Tamale, came back to Accra. I went to Accra Government Boys School, Row Road. Now they call the place some other name. And it was okay.
You didn't feel a sense of being dislocated again when you came back to Accra after, what was it, 10 years in Tamale?
Oh no, well, Tamale was for 3 years.
Only for 3 years.
That's about 3 years.
So when you moved back into Accra, you settled right back in easily?
I started what?
Did you settle back in quite easily when you came back?
Yeah, quite easily. Because, I come from Accra. And I had a lot of friends, Ghana boys. So it wasn't difficult to resettle.
So what was it like from being a coddled boy, not allowed to play sports in Tamale, moving back to Accra? Because we know that Accra has some quite tough schools, always has done.
It was easy, it wasn't difficult. One thing my dad did, when I started schooling at Accra Government Boys School, he was working with the Treasury. The Treasury at that time was where we now have the lotto people.
The National Lottery Authority.
The National Lottery Authority.
Oh, okay.
That's where the Treasury Department was. And you know Accra Government Boys School. You know where it is.
I have a rough idea.
Yeah.
Yes.
At the end of each day, my dad would walk from the Treasury Department to pick me from the school, and then we took a bus or something back to our home, and it went on for years. The point is, I was overprotected, and I used to envy my free colleagues who could play football, go to cinema. I saw my first cinema in 1942 during the war. A cinema called a film called Hollywood Canteen.
Hollywood Canteen.
Hollywood Canteen, featuring Louis Armstrong. I remember Louis Armstrong, Joe Louis, and a few other people.
Well, that's a great first film to see. As you.
This was at Palladium, Accra Palladium. And I was given an escort. I was escorted to the film. Halfway through, I had to leave with my escort back to So it wasn't easy.
But then you left and you moved to Takoradi, presumably.
I bolted.
You mean you ran away from home?
Oh, I did. I ran away. And I broke my father's heart. I always apologize to him for doing that. I left Accra Academy and went to Takoradi and enlisted in the British Navy. And we were transported to Freetown, Sierra Leone for training. I was trained as a sailor in the supply department of the establishment. And it was, the naval life was very good. There was discipline, very strict discipline. And on one occasion, just before the end of the war, the ship on which I was served was torpedoed. And we were exposed to the open sea for 4 days.
What, in lifeboats, or you were clinging to the wreck of?
No, it was a ship, a full ship, a cruiser. A cruiser. It was hit either by a torpedo or by a mine or something.
Sink. So you were clinging
it sank. The ship went. When that sort of accident occurs, there are lifeboats on the ship. There may be 4, 5, or 6, according to the population of the ship. And we call wherever they have the boat, we call it action station. Action station. So if there's a tragedy on board, the bosun is somebody, a chief petty officer, who, this bosun will whistle. They had a special whistle. and then you run to your action station. Everybody knew where he should go. And the trouble is to lower the lifeboat into the sea. It was very difficult. If you didn't do it well, the lifeboat will go like this and go under. So you have to, and pitch dark. Pitch. You couldn't see your own hand in the darkness. So those of us who were able to get on the boat, we were saved. We were in the open sea for 4 good days. 4 days in the open sea, with almost naked. But somehow, during the war, they used to have what you call coastal patrol. These were planes that patrolled the sea in case a ship, and that's what happened to it. They picked us, took us to Dakar, and we stayed there for some days, had medical attention and so on, and then we were brought back to Freetown. And it was during the period we were on the open sea in a lifeboat that I saw the image of my dad. You know, I saw it with my mind's eye, you know, telling me where I told you, and I regretted it. So I owe my dad an apology for breaking his heart. Yeah.
No, but you made it back to land, and we're all the happier for it.
Oh, yes.
So you returned to land, you managed to survive that terrible wartime experience. At what stage did you really start to be engaged with sports? You spoke about being aware of your dad and, you know, presumably wanting to protect you from cricket. I mean, cricket can be a pretty dangerous sport. Those cricket balls are, you know, traveling at high speed in the direction of bone, can wreak great damage.
Yes.
But when did you then, post your Navy experience, start to get into the sporting life around you?
When I came out of the Navy, not only Ghana, not only the Gold Coast, but countries that give men to fight.
To serve in the Second World War.
Yeah, they had to resettle them. So I came under the resettlement scheme. Ghana had a resettlement scheme for some of us. Those of us who could read and write better than others, you know. They gave scholarships to 200 of us. And the scholarship, you had to teach as a pupil teacher for 2 years, and then go to a training college for another 2 years. So I had one of these scholarships, and one of these scholarships I had, and I did roughly, instead of 2 years, I did about 10 months as a pupil teacher. And I was drafted to, using the naval term, drafted. I was drafted to Winneba Training College. It was then a new, fresh built new college. And because of free education at that time, teachers who were going for training for Certificate A, teachers going for Certificate A, the course lasted 4 years. But because of free education, they wanted teachers to man the classrooms. You had to do 2 years, then go out and teach for 5 years. Yes, that was under Kwame Nkrumah. And then you go back for another 2 years to get your teacher certificate A. So I had to do that. And during the period I was teaching, I sat for the GCE. So at the end of my teaching, the pupil teaching career, I was given a place to go to Wesley College. Wesley College.
Oh, Wesley College, not Wolsey College.
Wesley College in Kumasi.
Okay.
Yeah. I had to. I went there for another 2 years, And then I qualified for Teacher's Certificate A, post-secondary.
So that's 11 years of solid
That's right.
apprenticeship and training.
You see, in those days, people were not so much interested in going to university. We were interested in work.
And skills.
Skills. Work and skills. You know, and it was a good thing, but that period is gone. Now, almost everybody is going to a university.
But we hope that, you know, the appreciation for skills is coming back, because people are increasingly realizing that that's what you need to build a society around you. So after those 11 years, well, maybe to say during those 11 years, so you were teaching, presumably sports was part of the curriculum that you were expected to teach.
Of it, yeah. And I was very active in the school's sports activities, because I had been starved of it earlier. So I was very keen. Yeah.
So when you then started getting into sports yourself, both to teach and as a recreational thing, which sports did you move towards?
I was more interested in boxing and football. Not much football, but a lot of boxing. And let me tell you one interesting bit. In the Navy, where every year that we celebrated anniversary of the it was 6 September or so, when the war started, we organized a lot of activities. And you know, the Navy, we have what we call a flotilla. There's a groups you are grouped into, and we organize interflotilla sports in the Navy. So I decided to do boxing. And in those days, because of naval experience, I was smoking cigarettes profusely. Young man, you know, I was smoking cigarettes. And the officer who was supervising my training, I remember his name, it was Sub-Lieutenant Pooley. Sub-Lieutenant Pooley was telling me to stop smoking because I was going to box. I didn't listen. On the night of a boxing day, I was in the ring with a fellow called Cook Bex, a Sierra Leonean chap. Cook Bex, tough guy. And there I was. This man floored me in the first round.
Ow. At what weight?
Huh?
At what weight?
I was featherweight. Featherweight, yeah. You know,
so that was the end of your boxing career?
That was the end of my boxing. I lost it. But I was still following boxing. When I was teaching, I taught for a time at Kwanyaku. I taught in Swedru. I taught in Kwanyaku. In Kwanyaku, I was organizing boxing tournament. Yeah, for the public.
So this was the 1940s into the 1950s, after being demobbed. And who were the big sporting
You used the
heroes?
right word, demobbed, yeah, demobilized.
Demobilized.
Yeah.
So who were the great sporting heroes of the time? Was it the Sugar Ray Leonards?
The most outstanding sporting hero of the time was Roy Ankara. Roy Ankara and a few others. I've forgotten some of them.
Floyd Robertson?
Robertson, yes. I remember interviewing Floyd Robertson when he was preparing to fight a Welsh sportsman, boxer. And Floyd wasn't taking care of himself like I did in the Navy.
Not smoking, I hope.
He was doing everything, drinking, smoking, eating fufu, you know. And when they got into the ring, in less than, within a few rounds, he was down.
Oh.
Yeah. Floyd is dead. I don't know when he died. Yeah.
Right, I shouldn't laugh, but I do remember Floyd Robertson being spoken of by my mother as one of the best boxers of the time. There was even a song about him that she used to sing. When you then, you obviously had this keen interest and engagement with sports, but your own boxing career wasn't going very far. So how did you then make this transition from being just an avid sports fan and teaching sports in schools to then beginning to think about it as something that you would do as journalism?
Well, I learned. I took the trouble to learn sports. I learned sports, so that I could do my work very well. And it helped me. I learned a whole lot of things about boxing, soccer, athletics, and so on. And that's what I did.
You studied the history, you studied the rules and regulations.
Yeah, that's right. I bought books on the subject, and I was happy with it.
But what motivated that to do you, or were you just doing it out of passion and your love for sport?
No, I tried to develop interest, because without interest you can't do much. I developed interest in sport. I more or less tutored myself to love sports. And since I left sports, I don't think I've been pursuing it much. It tells you that the foundation was weak.
No, it sounds like you built a very strong foundation of knowledge, not just the engagement and, if you like, the beer bar talk, the banter between friends, but also knowledge of where the sport was coming from and the basis. But was there any pressure on you not to enter sports journalism? I mean, you have a good career as a teacher. It's a very respected profession.
Yeah.
Should still be a very respected profession, has gone through its ups and downs. But it was a career with prospects, a structure, and there you are saying that you want to venture into being a journalist, talking about live commentary. However well equipped you were to do that, was there any pressure on you, for example, from family, not to enter sport?
No, there wasn't. That was family. You're talking about family, not my father. Family. The family. Some members of the family were, in fact, not happy with my father forbidding me to do sports. He encouraged me. There's one thing I'd like to mention. There was something I did in the Navy. In the Navy, we ran shifts. So maybe you'll be on shift A from 6 in the morning till about 12. And so on. And during our spare time, when we were off duty, to entertain ourselves and break the monotony of the quietness on the ship and so on, we practiced public speaking. That's what we did. And all we did was write topics on pieces of paper, dump it into a hat, and then you pick, as soon as you pick, you go and talk. And that gave me a very good foundation in public speaking. So later in my life, I started teaching people how to speak in public. I did it quite. And then I met an American Peace Corps retired. I met this man. He wanted to set up a sporting club on one of the estates where he was living in Accra. And somebody told him if he saw me, it would be a very easy thing. And he did. You know what happened? There was retired public servants banquet, which occurs every year. And that day, that banquet, I was the MC for that. I was the MC. And when President Kufuor came in, he was going to address this huge gathering. I took him round the audience to shake hands with them and people introducing themselves to him and so on. So after that bit, it was time for him to do his speech. He was going to welcome these gentlemen to the occasion. So in my introduction of President Kufuor, I said, one of the principles of public speaking is that the speaker should know his audience. And because the president had been around to shake hands with, I was expecting a very good public welcome address. You know, when the President Kufuor went to the microphone, he said, "Thank you, Mr. Joe Lartey, for giving me my first lesson in public speaking." And there was a big clapping and so on, you know. And not knowing, this American guy was watching what was going on the telly.
No.
You know, so he tried to get in touch with me. One of my sons was then in broadcasting, also as a commentator when I left. So he got in touch with this boy, and I was introduced to him, a fellow called Dan Olafley. Very nice. He's still in Ghana. He's married to a Ghanaian. You know. So the two of us got together and we started Toastmasters in Ghana. The two of us. We started Toastmasters in Ghana. There's one of the Toastmasters in Accra is named after me, Joe Lartey Toastmasters. And it's flourishing. We started with only one. We now have about 30 clubs. Yeah. And I'm very proud of that. Very, very proud of that achievement.
So you should be. So there's a lot more to sports commentating than meets the eye.
Oh, yeah.
You say you were very fortunate to meet Festus Adai,
Yeah.
who was your boss and nurtured your career in broadcasting. We can talk a little bit about that in the second half of the program.
Yeah.
But just to remind listeners that you're watching and listening to Sunday Night, where we're talking to Joe Lartey, the legend of sports commentating and particularly football, about his life and times in sports journalism. And we hope that in the second half of the program, perhaps we'll learn a little bit about what he thinks about where sports journalism is going now, and also tell us a bit about some of the highlights of his own career. So, Ola Lartey, you were mentioning earlier on in the first half of the program about how you were very fortunate to meet somebody who was generous.
Yes.
And spotting your talent, decided not to keep your light under a bushel, as you said, but to encourage you to come out. That was a spectacularly fortunate attachment that you gained there. But you started out in talks and features, if I believe the information that we've seen, and then moved across to sports. Was that just a natural progression for you, or again, were you encouraged by Festus Adai?
I'd say that was providential. This was purely providential. I was with talks and features, and my duty was to edit Anansi stories that were brought in by, Then somebody took ill in the sports department, and I was asked to go on relieving duties. When I got there, my performance, Festus Adai said that this guy will be okay here. So he and the head of programs, who was a very interesting, fairly old man called Joe Lartey from Winneba. Joe Lartey was tough, and there was a long, drawn-out struggle between Festus and his boss. Finally, somehow, Festus got what he wanted, and I was transferred to the sports department. So I call it a providential occurrence, providential, because I hadn't looked at the sporting department before. But through this illness of somebody whom I relieved, I got into the sports department, and that has brought me to where I am now.
And again, clearly you took to it very easily.
Yes, I did.
Were you immediately given the front line, the big name assignments to go out to meet? So were you given the big interviews? Were big name sportsmen given to you as guests to present?
No, I wasn't given that sort of very early promotion. You know, you have to learn broadcasting, the skill. We have to learn it. We have a training school in the place, and you attended the training school, and where you were taught how to do broadcasting.
This was in the GBC
within
complex.
That's right. You know, and it was very interesting. For commentary, as a new man in the department, you only did summaries in between matches. You know, first half 45 minutes, then there's a break, and you summarize the first half, and then you go into the second half, and then you finish. So it was a question of learning step by step, and they were very particular. They were very, very keen on seeing that we were properly taught how to broadcast. I don't know what's happening now, but I don't think what's happening now goes for what we did in our own time. You have to learn to broadcast, learn production, learn presentation, learn interviews like what we're doing, a whole lot. And I think, well, commercial broadcasting is different from state broadcasting. Two different things. Commercial broadcasting, anybody can, you easily become a broadcaster. In state broadcasting, where you are paid by the state, you have to learn it and perform creditably all the time.
What do you think of some things that are particular features nowadays of sports commentary? For example, the speed and the volume. You know, sports commentators shout and they rattle along at the speed of knots. Was that the kind of skill you were also taught as a sports commentator?
We were taught to use pauses. We were taught to use pitch, how to, when you go up or down. We were taught how to prepare for commentary. You have to, you have to do interviews, which you will include in your commentary. You should learn if there's going to be a match between Ghana and, let's say, Egypt. You interview as soon as the Egyptian club arrives in Ghana. You go and interview the managers and so on, and learn a lot about the team. Because you are not an Egyptian, you don't live in Egypt, you live in Ghana. So you prepare, and we call that background information. So in the course of your commentary, you use bits and pieces of this interview. You say the goalkeeper for Egypt is 26 years old. He's been doing this he's been keeping the goal for so many years. You have very interesting.
You had to be able to absorb a lot of information,
yes,
take good notes and work from your good notes.
Yes.
And this is the days before the internet, when you could just sit with your phone and Google and get a few facts and put them together for something. So calling on a lot of your skills.
It seems to me that the TV is robbing sports commentary of what it used to be. You know, the TV, because people see the thing, and there's a difference between radio commentary and the other one, radio commentary
and TV
and sport and watching TV commentary and doing sport. You don't talk a lot. you label what you see on the screen. It's a whole thing to them.
So your love of language, which you got from reading, your skills as a public speaker, your profound knowledge of the rules and regulations, your engagement, your passion, everything coming into play here. But can you tell us, what were some of the highlights of your career as a sports journalist? Not all of them, I think, were associated with football. I believe you even once met the great Muhammad Ali. Was this when he was Muhammad Ali, or was it while he was still Cassius Clay?
Oh, Muhammad Ali, he visited Ghana. And he was quartered at the Ambassador Hotel. And I went to interview Muhammad Ali.
This was in what year?
I've forgotten the year.
In the 1960s.
Somewhere there, yeah. Muhammad Ali. And I went to Muhammad Ali's lounge. Eh? Is that what you call it? Lounge. I met Muhammad Ali as he came back. He came into the world naked, and he was gulping,
straight out of the shower.
Yeah, and he was downing a bowl of ice cream, and I thought, as we've been taught, we needed to do a bit of rehearsal so we can go into the interview. The man said, "Oh, what questions do you want to ask?" I said, "It will come." He said, "Go on." And we used to have tapes. Were they using tapes for recording?
Reel to reel.
Reel to reel tapes. And we had 30 minutes tapes, we had 15 minutes, Muhammad Ali, we produced about 10, 15 minutes tapes from Muhammad Ali. As he spoke, sometimes the poetry would come in. It was an experience. I got out of the interview sweating. Yeah.
That must have
and
been
then
fantastic.
I interviewed this man.
Jesse. Jesse Owens.
Joe Louis. Joe Louis came here. I interviewed him at Aburi.
At Aburi?
Yeah.
Wow.
And again, Festus, his openness. Festus made me join commentary with him on the arrival of a queen, I think 1962. Imagine 1 year. I did commentary from second D. And then he and I shared commentary on the commissioning of the Tema Harbor. And so these were highlights. And we covered the OAU, the first OAU conference in Ghana. And quite a whole lot of, I did one very, 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 very colorful commentary from Zaire. Kotoko versus Engelbert. It was no joke at all. It was no joke. I turned the whole of Accra upside down.
With your commentary.
Yeah, and when I came back Monday, a taxi driver from Kanda came to see me. He said he wanted to see the man called Joe Lartey, and I was introduced to you. The man said he was eating a plate of rice. But when I started, Engelbert had a penalty kick, And when they kicked, the ball went over the bar. And so when I shouted over the bar, the way I did it, he threw the food away. Yeah.
Over the bar, I remember that. So I presume Kotoko won that match? Or...
Yeah, Kotoko won.
Oh.
Yeah.
Those were the days.
I'd never seen a stadium crowded like I saw that day. There were 80,000 spectators. And Mobutu was in attendance. And he came with his motorcade, about a mile long, And all the spectators, the Congolese, they all carried a torch. So the stadium was lit. Was lit. I remember I had a funny experience. I went upstairs. It's called Tata Raphael Stadium. Very big place. So before the start of the match, I had to go and collect the team sheets. I went up there. I had a stopwatch hanging around my neck. Apparently, they thought it was a talisman or something. So while I was interviewing the manager, one of the officers, the Congolese officers, came out and spat on me. Phew, phew. Good God. And my heart was beating. I wanted to hit him. Then I remembered that I was alone with them. And right up there at the top. So I took my handkerchief and wiped the spit off. And we went off. These are some of the interesting experiences that I had.
My word.
Yeah.
A few close brushes you had there. But can you tell us two of the great matches returning to football on the national scale that you commentated on were Ghana's great wins in the African Nations Cup, 1963 and 1965. What was it like being, first of all, at the Accra Sports Stadium on that day when Ghana won the cup?
It was crazy. That's the word I should use. Crazy. You can imagine it. And it was as crazy as when the Republicans were able to defeat, to draw with
Real Madrid.
Real Madrid. That was an experience that really was. Because nobody gave them a chance. And the arguments that preceded the match were hot and interesting. But this was Kofi. When Ghana was down 3-2, Kofi was brought in as a substitute. So he came in. The pass that he gave to Edward Aqua, that won us the third. And the stadium was as quiet, was as silent as a grave that day. I was not, I think I'd been in broadcasting for about 2 years at that time. And it shook my nerves. So that, yeah.
Great times you lived through. And then in 1965, it involved traveling to Tunisia. In those days, what was it like traveling as a sports journalist? It sounds adventurous enough now, but what was it like in those days? How did you get to Tunisia?
I remember I went to Tunisia. I've forgotten how I got there, but I went by aeroplane. I went by air. And Tunisia, the Tunisians are very gentle people. I think they are the gentlest of the Arabs.
Dirty.
Yeah. that was the experience I gathered.
Really?
Very gentle people. And they treated us very well. They have a place in the capital. It's like the Garden of Eden. Wonderful place. Very much like the Garden of Eden. We didn't know the Garden of Eden, but we read about it. It was like the Garden of Eden in Tunisia, in Tunis. That's where it was, Tunis. I don't know whether they still, now Tunisia is going, they're going a bit crazy.
They have a little bit of a democratic problem on their hands.
That's why they have problems. But that's the way it should go.
But I mean, you would arrive in a country, you don't speak the language. Were you part of a national team, or was there a big GBC team around you, so you had the support around you, or did you have to shift for yourself?
To shift?
Did you have to actually make do for yourself, find your way around?
Yes, of course, you have to. Outside the company of your own people, you have to go out and look for information about the team, the home team, and that you do it on your own volition. And you have to be very careful. You have to be careful you don't get into trouble. Yeah. We learned bits and pieces of French to enable us to work in Francophone countries like Ivory Coast and Tunisia and the rest of it. So we could find our way around. Yeah.
So would you say that the 1963 African Cup in Accra was it a moment of great patriotic?
63.
That was one of Ghana's wins.
Yes.
Here in Accra, the one you described as the mad match where everybody
63.
was, Osei won the match with that pass that he made. Was that a moment of great patriotic pride for you?
Yes.
Or were you more concerned with delivering as a professional on the day?
It was a movement of patriotism. You know, Kwame Nkrumah, one of his policies was to use sport as a political instrument. And I think it helped him a lot. Anytime the Black Stars traveled out of Ghana, we had a strong contingent of civilians in the group.
The supporters.
That's right. And when we got to our destination, they held all sorts of political meetings behind closed doors. We don't know. We never know what they did. But that's it. So it was sport generated very huge interest among the people of Ghana in politics as well. You know, and sportsmen were held in very high esteem, very, very high.
So we have been talking to Joe Lartey on set at his house in Bowie, and you can hear the sounds of the neighborhood all around us. The wash bay across the road, the lorries going by, the children, the caterwauling. It's a lively neighborhood our sports legend lives in. We're very thankful to him for receiving us at his house this evening. Thank you for joining us again on Sunday night. Our production team has consisted of our chief producer, Abedi Nim, assisted by Dennis Asante. Our production assistant has been Sharifa Abdul Karim. We have had noble help from Bernard Martham, a professor. And I have been your host, Nana Yaa Mensah. I've been very pleased to bring you this Sunday night, and join us again next week on Asaase Radio for more tales of legendary figures in this land we call Ghana.